What we've got here is failure to communicate.
From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget, a podcast for building confident communication and female badassery. We spotlight women who have bridged the gaps in their lives by building strong relationships and speaking their teenage dreams into reality.
I made a huge connection in my life where my schedule was so regimented as a kid, with my mom being the dance teacher and stuff.
Jessie Golden is a devoted mother, holistic health practitioner, hatha yoga teacher, model, founder, and CEO of the gorgeous skin and body care line, The Golden Secrets. A portion of proceeds of The Golden Secrets goes towards one of 5 different charities based on current events and world need. And they use 100% natural, plant-based, non-GMO, sustainable, and fair trade ingredients.
She's also the author of The Golden Secrets to Optimal Health, a guide in inner and outer wellness, which you will literally want to inhale once you've seen what a shining example of health she is, whether you find her on Instagram, her YouTube show, or her podcast. Throughout many life challenges, including continuing to thrive with the debilitating disease rheumatoid arthritis, she has harnessed many alternative natural modalities that have helped her along the way. I know Jessie personally now for years. I think we originally met in like a modeling context, but now I just don't even know. It's been fun to watch her just continue to build on her knowledge and herself and her community. So we're honored to have her here today. Hi, Jessie.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was so sweet. And it's been an honor, Asha, to watch you grow into who you are and be a motherhood.
Ugh, the biggest, best, crazy thing. One of the things I've loved, you kind of weave your youth story into some of your Instagram posts and different things. And I've loved especially like the little pictures that you've posted about growing up as a dancer. And I know, so your mom had a dance studio, right?
Yeah, so my mom had a dance studio for 42 years. I tell people I literally grew up in the dance studio. Like, she tells me stories of how, I was literally in the little like rocking chair in the dance studio just watching before I could even walk. And I loved it, but I also, and I learned a lot of talk about foundational things. A lot of who I am came from the dance studio. The discipline, the hard work, the dedication, like all of that like was rooted into me. But just as you said in my intro, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which I'm sure we'll get into. And that's when I started being a little bit more gentle with myself, because up to that point, I was 29 when I got diagnosed. I had this very rigid, like dancer attitude, and dancers are tough. They're athletes, and they're really taught to ignore your body's signals and just keep going forward. And then on a more spiritual side, it was also really tough because I grew up in a dance studio where there was a mirror the size of the entire room. And so I got to judge myself, 24 hours a day. So my inner dialogue became very toxic. And then, of course, my dance teachers were judging me. My mom was judging me. There was a lot of judgment to reach this like epitome of perfection that I finally realized didn't actually exist. And then when I actually went into modeling, when I met Asha, some people would say, "Isn't modeling so hard?" I was like, "This is a piece of cake. Like, this is a piece of cake in comparison to ballet." Because ballet I took more personal, because it was something that you could work on and strive for. And if somebody didn't like my look, they didn't like my look. Like, there was nothing I could do. Like, this is what I look like. So I took it a lot more personal when my ability had something to do with it, So
I can totally relate to that. That kind of contrast of, I mean, but ballet especially is such a beautiful form of expression. And as a young girl, totally felt that freedom in it, in that I could express myself. I thought it was beautiful and intricate and precise to be a good ballerina. but that huge wall, mirror, and everything, like, you're lined up with a bunch of other girls, and you're all supposed to be doing the same thing even though you're all so different, you know, that it is kind of that, has positives, but also this kind of, uh, other side to it.
There's a lot of space for internal and external pressure to kind of reign supreme
Yes.
if you let it.
And I feel like I remember, like, the first recital that I did where instead of the mirror, there was just audience, you know, and realizing it's how different it is, you know, that it's I actually found it more freeing to be in front of a audience than in front of a mirror where all you saw is yourself.
100%. I always say I did my best performances by myself in the studio. Like, I was so hard on myself. This is something that I probably will always work on my entire life, is I'm just very hard on myself. Nothing's ever good enough. It's my driving force, but it's also my Achilles tendon. Um, but my mom would close the studio every night, so I would be stuck there late, and I would end up getting the dance floor to myself, and I would do some of the most amazing things in that room, and it was for me. Like, I didn't care if anybody saw me; it was just for myself.
That's amazing. Were you, I mean, because you were exposed to it as, like, a baby, were you just always dancing for as long as you could remember, or do you remember, like, the point that you actually started?
No, I don't remember starting. It was just like, it was just the way that my life was, and it was me, my mom, and my sister. My mom was a single mother. So it was a very feminine environment and very just dancery. Everything was dance.
Totally. Is your sister older or younger?
She's 5 years older.
Older, okay. How was that dynamic growing up?
You know what? We didn't have a good relationship. I think there was a lot of factors that go into it, but I've always kind of tried to like take that into consideration as being a mom. I don't think my mom had a lot of the tools on how to handle having another child. And long story short, when my mom got pregnant with me, they decided to move into like a new area, so they moved into a new house, which was like a bigger, better house. But my sister also lost all her friends and our cousins and our community, and she associated that with this baby in mommy's belly. So I really feel like she just didn't like me from the beginning. She kind of had this, love-hate relationship, and because she was 5 years older, there was kind of a big gap. So we were never really that close. In some weird ways, I kind of felt like an only child a lot of times.
Was it, same dad or a different
So
father?
same dad, yeah, and then same parents, and then my dad actually remarried. So I also have two younger brothers that are,
Okay,
yeah, gosh, 23 and 28.
okay.
Yeah,
I had no idea that your mom was a single mother, like you had been for a long time with
yeah, and
Leo.
something I didn't want to do because
Yeah.
I knew how hard it was.
That life is funny, it just catches you, right? Like, all the plans that you end up making go out the window.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point to make. I think I hung on to my um son's father a lot longer than I should have because I didn't want to be the stereotypical single mom, and because I had gotten pregnant kind of, it was unexpectedly, to say the least, and I didn't want everyone to be like, I told you so. And so I really hung in there a lot longer than I probably should have. um and then afterwards, I was determined to be the best single mom and to not have all these stigmas that are associated with it. And that, my mom was an amazing mother, but she didn't have a lot of the tools back in, this was like the early 80s. Things were totally different. And there was a lot of drama and chaos, and she probably told me too much information. A lot of times I felt like the mother in the household, but I was able to not do that with my son. So I think, if you're able to take those experiences and learn from it, then, it can become a positive thing.
Well, and I already feel like that's kind of a theme in your life, like having these, adversities, which obviously, if we could choose, sometimes we're like, no, I'd rather not have that experience or this one. But, once you've been through it, being able to turn it around and really using it as a light and a guiding force in your life, like becoming such a wonderful, single mother for a long time for your son. And also, some of your health journey. I know you've shared a lot of it, in your various channels, um, but yeah, the rheumatoid arthritis you said was when you were 29?
Yeah, so I was already a mom. And just to, like, touch on what you just said, I think that is a guiding theme, like, in my life, and I think that anybody could take that into their life. Like, I think sometimes people think that I don't have adversity because I share a lot of happy posts and I'm genuinely an authentic happy person. It's not that I don't have struggles, and it's not, you guys, we all have struggles, but it's how you choose to, you know, use them. You can become the victim, or you can be, use it to, like, I always say, every challenge is an opportunity to create more light in your life. So it's like, oh my gosh, here's this really unfortunate circumstance, but can I take everything that I've learned thus far and actually put it into action? And it's an amazing thing when you're able to do that. Life does get easier. The challenges keep coming, but we just become kind of a better student with these challenges, and we know how to handle them.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because I was going to say one of the recurring themes with a lot of our wonderful guests at Bridget is just this ability. Like you said, everyone has adversity. Everybody has these very intricate stories and past that make them into the success story they are today. And I think one of the common threads is just that ability to take every single hardship or trauma or setback and use it as a catalyst for either change or growth or whatever. And like that's really where the magic always ends up happening. It's like, okay, I fell flat on my face. What do I do now? And those are usually the women and the people we find are the happiest and most successful. And it has zero to do with the amount of adversity they've faced and everything to do with what they do next.
100%. And I find I'm always attracted to those people, and inspired by those people, and you can kind of tell who they are. They kind of have this, like, aura about them. Like, no matter what, they're just going to be okay and they're going to make the best of it.
As a child growing up with a dancer mother, did you always have an interest in, like, health and, all of the different modalities that you do to support health? Did you have an early interest in that, or did that kind of sprout based on the arthritis diagnosis and everything? What were
It's kind of interesting. So I grew up in Chicago, and the Midwest in the 80s. It was like meat and potatoes and like fast food, and everyone smoked in the house and drank a lot. Like, it was not a very healthy environment. Um, I actually got sick. I got food poisoning from eating meat that was not cooked. One of the fads in Chicago in the 80s was places where you would go pick out your own meat and cook them on these huge grills. And it was like a family thing. And I was cooking my own meat and I didn't cook it right. And I dreamt of, like, cows, and I got sick. It was like the first time I had, like, thrown up in my life. And I it was the first time I had made the connection that I was eating an animal, as crazy as that sounds. Because, when you're just raised in an environment, a lot of kids, like, we're not living on a farm, we're not killing our animals, you get your food out of the refrigerator, and you don't really associate that. So I actually became, like, obsessed with PETA and animal rights, and was, like, creating arguments with everybody at the dinner table about trying to turn them vegetarian. And I mean, I went through so many very interesting phases that started really young. And I think one of the best things that my mom did is she allowed me to go through these crazy phases. Like, that doesn't seem like a crazy phase right now, but literally my grandma said, "If you don't eat meat, you're gonna die," when I was 11 years old. Like, that's how unusual it was to just wanna not eat animals anymore, in '88. But, my mom allowed me to, like, kind of go through these phases, and she would make, like, an extra meal for me. We had to go to a special grocery store to get like soy. I was like eating soy and all that stuff. I do want to preface I'm not a vegetarian anymore, but I think that was the first time that I actually started being interested in health and the association. And looking back, I think that I was always drawn to like witchery kind of things. Like somebody gave me like like tarot cards, or somebody gave me like sage or incense. And I got my first yoga book when I was like 17, and it just like my mind just blew up. Like I was just like craving to make sense of what was going on in my world. Um,
I love that it sounds like your mom was very supportive in whatever way she could show up for you, like helping you go to the grocery store and cooking the extra meals. I'm super interested to hear where the sense of spirituality and nature come into play, because I know and I've read that as a young child you were already really interested in Mother Nature and absorbing all of that. So, where do you think that that spirituality and that interest and learning alternative modalities and everything, where does that come from?
Well, again, I think it's innate. I think all kids are kind of like in touch with that side. And then as we, realize that we're humans and we're living this life, and we kind of have to get grounded and into society, and we kind of disconnect. But again, my mom was very open. Like I would kind of talk to spirits, stuff like that. And she would be like, "That's great, honey." Or I would be like, I would have astral projection dreams every night. And I would tell her about, I was dreaming or, flying with Big Bird. He was my like spirit guide, so to speak, at that age. Um, but she never said, "That's crazy. What are you talking about?" It was like she encouraged this kind of weird behavior where, looking back, I think, my gosh, if my son did half of the things that I did, I would be like, maybe we should go talk to somebody. But I realized that I was just always very spiritual. And my practice has been to be more human, as weird as that sounds. Like I'm so happy in like the forest, living like a fairy in like fairy realms. Like I can do that all day long. My work, I'm not going to like change anyone's life doing that though. My work is, how can I utilize this life to the best of my ability? And I have to, you know, live this life and take meetings and be a functioning human and all that kind of stuff. But I think that I've always been really spiritual, and tapping into nature has been like one of my favorite. It's not even favorite. It's like I have to. Like I have to spend time in nature just to like balance out everything that's going on.
I was just going to ask about the yoga book when you were 17 and how that affected you. You said it blew your mind, and I think we're both curious to know how and how it changed your perspective at that time.
Yeah. I still have the book, by the way. It's like the best. It's interesting because I was suffering from some anxiety. I think I was drinking too much coffee, to be honest with you. I was in high school. We would drink a lot of coffee. Like in high school, we would go to coffee shops. That's what we did. And I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. And I first was blown away by like the breathing technique, the pranayama. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I just like dove in. And then just the whole practice, everything. Like there's 8 limbs to yoga. The most common one that we practice here is asana, like the actual poses. But there's so many other aspects of yoga that I was just blown away by. And then I was already into being vegetarian, and that just kind of, that whole concept kind of was like, "Oh my gosh, these are my people." Like, they're vegetarian too. They actually believe that the suffering and pain that the animal goes through, like you digest that. And I was like, yes, this is what I've been trying to tell everyone. um, so, in that book, even more, like I talked about this recently even on my Instagram, but there's like all the different kriyas, like the abdominal churning and like the nostril, you know, uh, nasal cleansing and all these other things that we don't hear about a lot. But And then, of course, because I was a ballerina, and I know Asha is very similar to this, I could already do all the poses. So it wasn't about the poses for me. Like I would look at the pictures and I would just do it because I've already been training for 17 years. Like I can do the poses. It was everything else. It was the breath. It was coming to the mat and listening to your body. I mean, yoga was the first time that any teacher had ever said, "If you're tired, go to child's pose." I was like, "What?" Like in ballet, it's like, "I don't care if you're tired, do 20 more." Or like, "You wanna look at the clock, we're gonna do it again." It was like it blew my mind, like, "Wow, I'm actually supposed to listen to that voice that's like, 'You might die right now,'" you know? So, everything about yoga from that point on up until now, has been my saving grace. I tell people yoga has saved my life more times than I can count. It's like my safety zone.
And, I just, like, love picturing you, finding yoga and as a dancer too, I can completely relate to that, like, I went to my first class, I think it was, like, Brian Kest Power Yoga in Santa
Yeah,
Monica.
yeah, yeah.
Like, and it was my first class, I was going with this girl from UCLA that was, like, a professional figure skater, and she's like, "I'm doing yoga to try to, like, just get healthier and have a little more perspective." She's like, "Come with me." So we went, and I just remember the first couple classes, I was like, "There's no mirror in here, like, how does anyone know they're doing it right?" Like, how does anyone know their form? Like, they're saying, "Watch your form and do all these things." I'm like, "How am I supposed to tell? I don't have a mirror," you
I
know?
get goosebumps, Asha. It's like exactly the same thing. It's so interesting because it's an introspective work, which is like complete opposite. It's so
They're like, I encourage you to close your eyes, like, match your breath to your movement, and I was like, "What is that?" Like, breathing while I do these things? Because pretty much in ballet, when I'm doing hard stuff, I'm holding my breath.
no
Like,
breath was never talked about.
nothing, it was just suck it in and keep it there.
Yeah.
When most people it's so interesting too, because I mean, obviously, I work in healthcare, but, like, most people do not breathe properly, and I don't know where or how or why we've conditioned ourselves as a society to completely forget how to do the one basic thing that we're supposed to know how to do subconsciously.
Literally, we do all the time.
Voluntary and involuntary. So everyone's it's interesting. I don't remember. I might have even mentioned this in my book. It's like now it's not becoming as common, but it's okay if someone says, "Oh, I'm going to go outside and take a smoke break." And they're actually doing pranayama yoga. When you take a cigarette and you retain the breath and then you slowly exhale. But if you were to say, "I'm going to go outside and take a couple deep breaths," people would look at you like you're crazy. you know, or like, "What's wrong?" But if you actually just simulated like you were going to smoke, you would get a little pranayama in there and some oxygen to your body.
I feel like you just have so many wonderful practices that you've just built into your life that you share with people, whether it's um, the way you move your body, the way you take care of your skin, obviously, all the beautiful like products you've developed. How early did you start kind of creating practice just of little things that you do to care for yourself?
I mean, I think that started really young again with my mom. My mom was a great example of someone who really took care of herself. She's a Libra and she's like ruled by Venus, so she's like just this goddess walking all the time. Like I have to do my 5-step skincare thing, and I just like would watch her as a kid. She never said anything bad about herself. She never said anything bad about her weight or the way she looked, which was, looking back was like a really great example. So I think it started young. Like I loved having fun doing these little, what I called kind of girly things back then. And of course being a dancer, it's like you have to do your makeup and you're often with other women, and it's like a very communal thing. Like you braid each other's hair and you do each other's makeup, and it's this whole kind of tribal thing. So I think it started probably back then, and then as I became a mother, I realized the value of these self-love practices, and how when I don't have this abundance of time to myself, how important they are, and how just 5 minutes of a little gua sha can like bring life back to me and like make me a better mom. And and then when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, obviously it accelerated even more because without my health, I don't have anything and I'm no good to anybody, especially my son. So through that and through being a mother, I really learned the value of self-love. And and I don't think I had self-love before that. It's like, okay, I have this human being who's relying on me. Like if I don't have love for myself, then, what's the point? And I have to have love for myself to heal myself. And one of my favorite ways to do that is through these little rituals of taking care of myself, whether it's how I make my coffee in the morning or, putting music on or, like the gua sha or the sauna. I mean, I do a million things a day, these little mini breaks that are just like feed my soul and help me function at my highest.
And it sometimes I feel like those breaks can feel like, like, oh, it's like that self-care is selfish, but even just taking that little break, I feel like it's another amazing way to just check in and make sure you're being present, because when you're doing all of those things, you can't like kind of mindlessly, you know, completely tune out when you're doing your gua sha or whatever it is. Like
You definitely can, but I encourage women, like, I didn't know that I was gonna end up owning a skincare line. I always say it's an accidental business, but I remember when I did decide, "Okay, I guess I'm gonna do this," I had to make it deeper, like, I always say beyond the skin. So I always encourage women, like, take the thing that you're gonna do already. You're already gonna wash your face, you're gonna put a mask on, you're gonna put the moisturizer on, you're gonna do all these steps. Make it a mindful practice. Bring mindfulness into it. Say some positive affirmations. Look at yourself in the mirror. Say some beautiful things to yourself. Like take that moment to practice those self-love rituals. And that was the practice for me. I mean, that's kind of how the whole business started is I had this little bottle of essential oil that I made since high school and everybody kind of had this scent like that was like, oh, that's Jesse, where did you get that? What is that? And I was like, oh, it's just the oil I made, it's not a big deal. And I didn't actually want to share it with anybody. I was like, this is my scent. Like, I don't want to give it to anybody. And then I realized, gosh, for like at that point, I've been like 15, 20 years, like I had this little bottle in my purse and throughout the day I would take it out and it was a moment for me to tune in with myself and check in with myself and see where I was at. And then on top of it, it was essential oils. Like back then, still some people are still using toxic perfumes, but that's a whole nother story. But back then, I just was like, essential oils weren't as common. They were more like the hippies that used it. But I also noticed that the effects of the essential oils would just kind of help bring me clarity and calm me down. And I also noticed people around me seemed to be better. And I was like, this is like something really special. I think I should share this with the world. That's kind of, how it started. It was like, well, my whole passion is to share these golden secrets because I had had a blog up to that point for a couple of years, which was just tools that worked for me, whether it was in parenthood or spirituality or yoga or beauty or whatever it was. And this was one of my favorite tools. So I was like, I have to share it.
So, was the golden secrets before or after your rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis?
So that's kind of what sparked the whole thing. So when I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I I got sick really quick. It came on really quick. I think looking back, I went undiagnosed for a long time because I was kind of used to just not feeling great, like as a dancer and like as a single mom, and I was breastfeeding for 4 years. I was always like just tired, and I always had an excuse of why I just didn't feel great. And then when I finally got diagnosed, I spiraled and basically didn't walk for like a year of my life. I was 90 pounds. I was really bad. When I was able to recover from that, um, that's when all the yoga companies just started to come to birth. And I hit it just at the right time. I had just gotten my yoga certification and I stood out because people already knew me as a model, but now I was actually a certified yoga teacher. And these companies were looking for yoga girls. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I've done yoga. And like, they've never, And so because I was a teacher, it was just an easy way for me to say, I've actually done yoga, for a long time. So I was able to work with all these yoga companies. And then I ended up being able to shoot the cover of New York Times, and they shot all these athletes and they chose to use yoga as the cover, which was me. And I was shocked. Like, we didn't know that it was going to be. And then at the time there was Facebook, and I was getting all these messages of people saying, how did you do it? Like, they had seen me not being able to walk and like going through this horrible illness. Rheumatoid arthritis at that point was associated as like an old person's disease. Like, I was definitely not the face of rheumatoid arthritis. And I could not respond to everybody's messages, emails, this and that. And I was like, I have to write a blog post. Like, I just have to start sharing like what I'm eating, what I'm doing, what I did. Da, da, da. So I started the blog and I simultaneously started writing my book. It was like, I just had all this information inside of me that I felt like I had to get out. And I felt like I didn't go through this for nothing. Like, I can share this with other people and hopefully help, as many people as I can. So the blog came, that's when the blog came.
I mean, I can actually really relate to this because I am 31 and this year I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which is in the same family as rheumatoid arthritis. And it's not a sad story, but I also feel like at this age, you don't suspect that you're going to be going through something like this. And it did. It shook me because in all other areas of my life, like health and wellness is a very important thing. And I mean, you as a dancer and always being hyper aware of your body and, what you're doing, how did you go through that diagnosis mentally? Like, can you walk us through sort of like what started happening, what sort of tipped you off that you needed to be worked up for anything, and then how you got yourself through it mentally?
Yeah, it was so humbling. I will say that. It is my greatest teacher and it humbles me every single day still. Um, Up until that point, I really thought I was bulletproof. And I had that mentality of when a problem comes at me, I'm just going to go at it even harder. And you can't do that with chronic disease because you'll just get worse. You actually have to like stop what you're doing and listen to what it's trying to like tell you or teach you. And the first ego check was I was actually getting my yoga certification when I got diagnosed. And it came on so quick. I was in a 4-month training program at Yoga Works. I had just met my peers. I got diagnosed, and it felt like the next day I couldn't walk. Like, I was just like the Tin Man. Like, I was like, but I had walked into this teacher training with my ego going, I already know all of this. I've been studying since I was 18. Just give me my stamp of approval so I could say I'm a yoga teacher. And then the universe had another idea. They're like, guess what? We're going to shut your body down, which is what you've relied on your entire life. And then we're going to actually make you sit on the sidelines and watch all your peers practice. And you're not going to be able to practice. And you're going to have to learn how to sit still with yourself and your thoughts and learn all the other limbs of yoga. So I literally had to talk to my teachers and ask them if I could maintain. And they said, of course, you can stay in the class, as long as you're there. And I couldn't physically do a lot of the asana practice. So a lot of my peers never even saw me practice yoga. I spent a lot of the time just sitting there watching the classes that were the asana part. But it was the first time in my life that I was really forced to listen to what was going on inside of my body. And I can't reiterate enough, but my entire life, I expressed who I was. I transmuted pain, energy, every single thing that I was going through dance. and movement. That's how I dealt with everything in my life. And now I couldn't move. And I was like, what do I do? Like, this is crazy. So I really dove into my yoga practice, and that's when I started also noticing that my inner thoughts were very toxic, and I was like judging myself a lot. So bringing mindfulness and making better agreements with myself. It's the first time in my life I had to ask for help from my community and my friends. That's one of the hardest things for me to do. um, so there was so many lessons in that whole process. And to talk about the actual diagnosis, I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they would look at me and say, "Oh, you're fine." It was kind of like, "Oh, you're fine." And I'm like, "No, I don't, something's wrong. I don't feel right." And I went to all different doctors. I went to Ayurvedic doctor, I went to homeopathic doctor, I went to holistic doctor, I went to regular doctor. And I was chasing my son in the park one day. I thought I tore my Achilles tendon. That's what it felt like. And I ended up having to go to the hospital, the emergency room. And the lady that was taking care of me looked at my hands, which were kind of black and blue. The knuckles were a little black and blue. And her mom had rheumatoid arthritis. And she said, "I'm going to send you to a rheumatologist." And I'm like, what? I had never even, like, I'd never even heard that word. Like, that wasn't in my realm. Like, what? Um, so sure enough, I got some blood work, and tested positive for the RA factor. And then that's kind of when my whole journey began with that at 29.
Did they have you, once you got that diagnosis, was there any, like, medication or, like, treatments that you, like, had to start beginning on a regimen?
Yeah. So, like, they normally, in conventional medicine, they normally like to treat it aggressively in the beginning because they feel like there's a better chance to get into remission. So I was like, at that point, I want to preface, it was such a pendulum swing for me because I didn't even take Tylenol. I gave birth at home naturally. I was like very much a hippie. I never took like prescriptions, or, I was, it's totally different. And they were like, "Okay, we want to put you on methotrexate," which is basically chemo. We want to put you on methotrexate and Humira. And I did all the things. I said, okay, in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, I was like, in order to get my family's support, I think I have to try this at least. And then if it doesn't work, I could say, at least I tried, guys. Now let me try, all these other modalities and get your support. So it didn't work. I got all the side effects. The methotrexate was really hard. I started bleeding, actually. I bled for 15 days straight. And this was it's a side effect listed as methotrexate. My period had been regular my entire life, so I knew that this was a side effect of the drug. And this was a big wake up call for me, just with how chronic disease is taken care of in general in allopathic medicine. Is my doctor said, "Let's get you on some birth control to regulate your cycle." That was his, you know, suggestion. And I was like, but this is a listed side effect. Like, it's not my cycle's not the issue. Like, so, I can't remember how much time I actually gave it, but I did give it a good time. And then, shortly after that, I had found, this woman by the name of Nina Dobik, who was a macrobiotic counselor. And I basically dedicated my life to trying every single thing natural. Like, I had a chef. I spent my life savings, to help me make all the food that was needed through this macrobiotic diet, because my hands weren't working well at the time and I could hardly walk. So my entire life was regimen. I had like a shiatsu guy. I had every single guy, and I was just getting out of this yoga teacher training. So I had 40 classmates, and every single one of them had a guy. They were like, "I got a guy that can heal you," or "I got a guy." So I had people coming in left and right, and I was trying everything. And long story short, I think with chronic disease, you have to be open to natural modalities, and you have to look at the core of everything. You have to look at gut health, and you have to look at like mold exposure, and then you have to dive deep into like spirituality and like where did you make certain connections in your life. Like I made a huge connection in my life where my schedule was so regimented as a kid, with my mom being the dance teacher and stuff, that the only time that I got to be home and just watch cartoons and eat in bed was when I was sick. So I played sick a lot. And so did I maybe like make this weird connection with like being sick so that I can rest, so I can have an excuse to rest, because I'm not valid enough to just say I need a rest. I need to be sick to have this. So there's been a lot of work, that I've done, and I'm still doing. I tell people that I'm thriving with rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm doing a lot better than most. I'm not on any medication. I have, in the last several years, though, had to go back. And every time I've gone back to um, medicine, like TNF blockers, which is like the only type of medicine that help prevent the actual like deformation of joints and stuff, I end up getting all the side effects, or I end up getting bladder infection. And then you have to go on, and it's like this whole spiral. So for me, my joints are a little damaged, but my spirit is healthy. I feel good. Um, it's interesting because like all my markers and everything are always perfect, so I'm this very unusual case.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and we don't have to dive too far into this, but in practicing medicine, one of like my huge foundational beliefs in the way that my partner and I practice medicine is that in at least in the United States, everything is so population based. So there are women like you and like me who will, you'll go and have lab work done. And like 9 times out of 10, everything looks normal. And they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. And you're like, but wait, what is my baseline? Like, what do I look like when there's nothing going on in my body? And that's the question that they can't answer because we, unfortunately have to work within this parameter of this is what 99% of the population looks like when everyone's truly very, very different.
And unhealthy.
Yeah.
The baseline is pretty unhealthy,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately.
Maybe one day they'll be able to bring the guidelines down toward, a healthier population.
Yeah. I think though, like to summarize that whole thing, like innately if something is going on. And I know like Asha's had health issues, you've had health issues, like And so if there's something like inside of you going, something's not right, like don't ignore that, even if your markers are okay.
I'd love to kind of jump back in time a little bit, and talk about like when you started modeling and then in your pregnancy and stuff, and just that kind of like that time of life a little.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people find it interesting, but I hated modeling. I really hated it. Um, I moved to Florida when I was 18. I actually went to Florida. This is kind of the things that if my son did, I would lose it. Went to Florida on spring break and never came home. I was like, I'm just gonna stay. Um, and I had an aunt that lived there, so I just kind of started working with her. She had a furniture store. I was like driving a 15-foot box truck. I was just doing whatever, but I was honestly just happy that I didn't have a rigorous dance schedule and I could be on the beach, and I was just really enjoying life. I actually did child modeling when I was young, and I just didn't really like it because my schedule was always so full with dance, and I thought, here's another thing that's going to take me away from my friends. But now that I was 18, I was like, you know what? Modeling like might be my freedom ticket. Like maybe I could, do this modeling thing and live like a really great quality of life because I wouldn't have to like work as much. So I started modeling in South Beach, and things went great. I booked Abercrombie. It was like one of my first jobs, and then things just kind of started taking off. But I had such a hard time with the industry. I went to New York, and there, especially back then, was so not okay. Like, so not okay. I was going to nightclubs, with the agency. I was 18. I was going to nightclubs. There was, I was doing, go-sees, going to random older gentlemen's houses, like all over the, New York, like just showing up and doing like Polaroids. I mean, it was just not, everyone was very creepy. I didn't like it. And I quit. And it was like right after my Abercrombie everything took off. I was on hold for like Vogue and Guess, and like Sports Illustrated was interested. And I walked away from everything. Said, I can't do this. I hate this industry. I don't care about anything. Like, I don't want to do it. And I took like a year off. And then I ended up moving to California, and then with my tail between my legs, I kind of restarted modeling, and I had to start all over again. I missed my window of opportunity, basically. And I didn't really start loving modeling, and I'm sure Asha can relate, until the yoga world allowed me to actually use my talent and modeling. Like the modeling thing, like just judging me on how I'm looking, like holding something and, okay, getting paid to do this. But like if I could do scorpion, or like I could do some like cool stuff, like I was like, this is so cool. Like one of my favorite campaigns was for like Under Armour, and it was like this women empowering, like, they had just launched their yoga line, and I was like, this is like, I could do this forever. Like that was my favorite thing. That's when I started really loving the modeling world, when it went beyond just, the vein.
Yeah. Stand, that's I can totally relate to that. Like, I had always liked runway because I was like, it's movement based. It's like energy and kind of I mean, you're just walking, but like the song and the outfit and everything, I was like, I feel like I can like play a part, and dance kind of while I'm doing my runway walk, but the rest of it, I was like, I just can't figure out, like, print modeling, and then it was literally I think, when I booked Aloe for the first time, for one of their campaigns, you had done the one right before me, and, they reached out, they're like, we work with all these yogis, who are amazing, but we're trying to find some models who actually do yoga, like, actually do like this girl, Jessie, like, can you do yoga like her? I'm like, "Wait, I've been doing yoga for, like, 8 years, and none of my agents ever asked about yoga. I'm like, "I can use this?" I'm like, "For sure." I remember, like, I met them in, like, the lobby of the agency and was just on the floor, like, doing all my yoga, and they're like, "Okay, perfect, let's go."
And it was something I was proud to share because, I hate to say it, but I modeled for a lot of companies that I don't like necessarily align with who I am. I mean, I think that I was trying to explain that to my son now because he's 17. I'm like, and he's modeling. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, as an influencer, you get to choose who you want to advertise. Like, when I was your age, I didn't have a choice. They were like, Jesse, you booked McDonald's. Like, this is what you're doing. It wasn't like I had a choice. Like, now it's like, I only share products and things that I authentically love and actually use. So that's the beauty of it now. But I think another part of it, like talking about being a mom and pregnancy, is I did model my entire pregnancy, and we started working together after I had him. That also, for me, I mean, I do owe modeling so much because it allowed me the financial ability to be a single mother. I mean, I was a single mother. Like, I never received money. I never had, there was nothing like coming in from the other side. And I also got to be with my son. Like, I only worked like once a week, and I would go on castings and I would bring him with me. I did start loving it during that time too, because I was just so grateful that I didn't have a 9 to 5 and that I could be with him.
Well, I love how everything in your life too sounds like it either has to be, or you have a deep desire and will to make the things that you work on or are a part of just very intentional and very aligned with your inner beliefs, your spirituality, and your energy. It's just like a very powerful thing. And I mean, I know our listeners can't see you, but it literally comes off of you as you're speaking about your experiences.
You're, like, birth story and everything is so incredible too. Like, I have so much respect for women who are able to have an unmedicated birth. How like, what big ways do you I mean, there's so many ways I feel like when you become a mother that you transform, but are there any, like, specific ways that you just saw yourself differently before and after having Kaleo?
I say I came into my own when I became a mother. And I like make everybody around me like want to be a mom. Like I have so many friends who are like, I became a mom because you just made it so fun, but I tell people I didn't like necessarily want to have kids. Like it wasn't like, there's a lot of people that are like, I can't wait to be a mom. Like that wasn't me. I wasn't like it wasn't really on my mind. I wasn't really thinking about it. So I was shocked that how I took to being a mother. Like my motherly instinct just like tapped in, and my life just made sense. Like prior to being a mom, I don't want to say this was my experience and this is not for everybody, but looking back I feel like my life was a little shallow. Where like my biggest worries were very minuscule. And being a mom, like I just wanted to be a better human being. He was my driving force, like for everything. He is my driving force, like everything that I do. He just makes me want to be a better person and motivates me and really gives me purpose.
Would you say that your son was one of the big inspirations for developing the golden secrets as you did? Because you did mention that before a certain point, you didn't necessarily want to share what you felt was your signature scent and a signature part of you. So was that part of it?
I think the driving force for the whole golden secrets and how Kaleo is connected to that is I have a lot of friends in my life that don't necessarily need to birth things into reality because they're very stable in their life. They have financial security, they are happily married, they don't have to like worry about bringing in income. So the golden secrets and Kalea, they were my motivation, of course. Like I was thinking, I'm phasing out of this whole modeling thing, especially because girls like Asha were coming in that could still do the scorpion and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to these auditions for yoga companies and I'm like doing scorpion with like 20-year-olds and I'm like, what am I doing? I think I literally called, I think we had the same agent at this time. I called like Linda and I was like, I think I'm retiring.
Right,
I
right.
don't think I want to do this anymore. I was like, this is ridiculous. Um, so I knew that I had to like do something else. And had I just like had the financial security, I don't know if I would have gone through all the work that it's take to birth this into reality. So, wanting to give Cleo a really good life, then yeah, that was definitely connected.
I think there's so much power behind that, and it's, like, even regardless of what stage you are in life, setting that reason for why you're doing something can be so I mean, if you don't have that, you won't put things into place to work hard as hard as it takes to create a business like the Golden Secrets, but having that vision of, this is I wanna build something that's sustainable for me and my growing family, like, there's nothing more powerful than that.
And I think people are capable of doing that, even if they are secure. But I think it does take so much work to like build a company from the ground up that you really need some like, oh, because there's some days where you're like, I just want to give up. But when you don't have the opportunity to give up, you dig deep and you figure it out and you make it work.
How has it been, because you were a single mother for a long time, and now you're married, you're in this beautiful relationship with your Viking man, Devin, right? How has it been, like, transitioning from being, a single parent, the sole provider for your little family, to embracing a new partner and, that kinda integration?
Oh, wow. It's been the whole thing has been so incredible and so amazing. I think the first thing that I think of and like the people that are close in my life is I'm able to be feminine again. And I'm able to be like the fairy person that I was as a kid because my husband is so grounded and rooted and logical and trustworthy that I can finally, for the first time in my life, relax. And if I can give advice to anyone, like wait to find a partner that allows you to be who you authentically are and balances you out like that. He's because I had to be the dad and the mom, and I had to be the provider, and I had to do all these things. And you become very masculine. You hold yourself differently. You become more rooted. You become more, you have to. And I noticed that a few months into us dating, I mean, I knew he was the one, but I was just kind of flowing a little bit more. And it's just such a relief. I mean, him and my son have the best relationship. He was also a stepson. So he noticed, he did things like when I introduced them that I wouldn't even think of. He was so aware of how Kaleo might take him. He's like, well, he's a teenager. He might be protective over you. I think, he's so, I always tell him, like, you're so spiritually enlightened, but his parents are, like, his dad is literally enlightened. Like, he grew up in a very enlightened environment. So it's been amazing. It's been so nice to have him take on like literally half, like he's taken on, he considers Kaleo his son for sure.
That's like such a beautiful, I mean, that just feels like destiny that he had to have had that experience already with his stepfather and to know exactly what to bring to the table to you and to Kalea. It's just like what could be more stated than that? And your background with your mom being a single mother and you being a single mother until I mean, it's all just so beautiful. It's like a
It really is. It took a long time though. I didn't realize how valuable this was, but I share a lot about, my personal life on Instagram. And I remember when I said something about, you know, finding the love of my life at 39. I found the love of my life at 39. So like I like to let women know that like there is hope. It's okay. I mean, I dated. It's not like I was single that whole time, but I didn't find my match, until I was 39.
Well, and I love the way you talk about your partnership too, and the way that you, as a single mother, had to carry these two very different types of energies. And I think, in a lot of ways, a lot of people do that in their daily lives. So when you have a partner who really is like a great, stable partner, that's exactly what they do. They take the burden off. They don't take away the essential parts of you, but they take the burden off so that you can really breathe and just be yourself and flow into that state of who you are at rest. So, I mean, I love that. And what a beautiful relationship that he's created with your son.
it's like and sometimes the hard thing is that you don't really know it until you find it. But the like, I can breathe, like, I can just be me, instead of being something that I think I need to be for someone. We really wanna prioritize just the realness of being women, whether it's talking about early on with our period starting, whatever, the experience of becoming a mom, birth, but also pregnancy loss, and how real it is. Are you comfortable talking a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah. No, I think, that's my saving grace is I had several girlfriends share their experience with me. So when it happened to me, I was able to draw from their strength. And I remembered how I viewed them in so much love and light and forgiveness, like going, what do you mean? Like, that's not your fault. Like, it's just how it's like, it's just not the right timing. Because they shared with me, I was able to handle the pregnancy losses. I've had two in the last year. with so much more grace. And so once I felt comfortable, I knew I was going to share. I was like, this needs to be talked about. Like when you read the statistics and how common it is, and how it's not talked about, and there's still like this stigma. It needs to be talked about, and almost as common as, getting pregnant. Like it's just like part of it. Like it's almost like getting your period. Like I even see a lot of people on this spiritual realm trying to do this work, and I don't like it. I see this thing of going, you just need to love yourself more, or you just need to heal the feminine divine from your grandparents, your mother. To me, that is again taking responsibility that it's your fault. And I don't like any of that. Sometimes you just have a bad egg and it's not the right time, and you just have to trust the process. For me, like, because I'm 42, it's like the statistics are like 1 in 7 eggs are good, I think is the statistic. So when my husband and I decided we were going to start trying, I haven't shared this publicly yet. So this is like this is the scoop right here. We were in the middle of quarantine and we were outside having our coffee, and he goes, "I think we should start trying." And I was like, "Trying what?" And he's like, "To get pregnant." And I was like, "What? Really?" And you guys remember, like, in the middle of quarantine, it was just such a weird vibe. Like you were doing, I don't know, it was just like this weird energy. And I was like, well, we're just home all the time anyways, might as well. And I had thought that it was going to take me like a year, because I do have a 17-year-old and a lot of my friends had children after me. I would say more than half of them had a hard time getting pregnant, or, you know, pregnancy loss, or, tried for a long time. So in my head, with my age and everything, I thought it's going to take forever. And we got pregnant on the second try. I was shocked. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. But what I didn't know, what I wasn't educated on, is the egg quality. And, my body miscarried. But the blessing is, it's like the body is so amazing. I didn't have to have any intervention. Once I knew that my body was miscarrying, I allowed it to flow, and I let it go, and I released, and it was very gentle on myself. And it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do, because there was something wrong, you know? And I think when you look at it in that way, it's a little bit easier to deal with. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, the first time Devin and I laid in bed for 3 days and we allowed ourselves to grieve, and then it was like we just pulled up our bootstraps and we're like, okay, this is what we're doing. Like, and we continued to live our life. We're big believers in, the vibration you put out into the world is what you get back. So we allowed ourselves to process and grieve and cry and like experience it. Like, I think that is so important, to allow your body, however long that takes, to go through that process. And then we actually waited quite some time, and then tried and got pregnant again right away, which to me is a victory. Like, I'm still looking at it as a victory. It's like I'm 42 and I'm able to get pregnant. I just have to get the right egg. I have a good amount of eggs. I've done all the tests and everything else is good. So I just have to get that good egg.
Yeah. My mom had my baby brother at 43, and it was perfect, and it was planned. He's 16 years younger than me, and he just got his first job at In-N-Out. It's the cutest thing
So
ever.
cute. I love hearing stories like that. And that's exactly what I mean. When women share, it's like it's just we just feel more connected, and then it gives me hope. I swear every time I tell my story, somebody says, "Oh, I know someone that had a baby at 43." And it's just like, oh, I love that.
Absolutely. Say, I love that you share openly your story about miscarrying and trying. My husband and I actually got pregnant earlier this year late last year, and it wasn't planned, and we went through a miscarriage. And like you, I drew a lot of strength from friends who'd been through the same thing. But you definitely have to give your body the grace to feel it. I mean, Asha was there for me and was a very powerful reminder of, giving yourself the grace, not blaming yourself because it's a very natural thing to do. And, you allow yourself to go through that natural grieving process because it is a loss and that's part of processing it. And you have to, like with all things in life, really allow yourself to experience the low lows so that when the high highs come, they're really great.
That's the whole part of the human experience, is the duality of it all, And I'm so sorry for your loss, but just hearing that, it's like, see, we're in the same tribe. Like, there's so many of us in this tribe. And I remember the first time it happened to me, I'm like, I didn't I didn't think this was part of my story. Like, I've been through enough. Like, I remember going, I got enough stories. Like, I don't need this experience too, but like maybe I do. Maybe I'm a catalyst to like help other women not feel so alone. And that's my driving force with, like we talked in the beginning, like if something challenging in my life is going to happen, I'm going to share how I'm going to get through it, and hopefully it will inspire somebody else, to better able to go through their life.
I this could be a totally weird analogy, but I keep just thinking of your beautiful little essential oils, scent, and initially thinking like, but this is my thing, and like maybe I shouldn't share it. And then realizing that like, this helps me so much. Like, why wouldn't I share it? And I think that in so many of, ironically, our trials, that aren't as beautiful and nice smelling as like our essential oils might be, our trials can sometimes feel like this is my thing, unfortunately, this is my thing. But the beauty in it and what keeps us like moving and really like, I mean, I feel like adds so much significance hearing both of your stories and experiences. Like they're so unique. Each different story and trial is so unique. But to be able to share them, it's like, okay, well, then we can all kind of bear it together.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something kind of really beautiful.
I do have to say, I've been working on this thing lately, I noticed it a couple years ago, not to attach myself to my disease of rheumatoid arthritis, not to attach myself to challenges. I don't even like to say I am resilient anymore, because I feel like then life gives me things to prove to myself that I'm resilient. Dr. Zach Bush said something about that with his wife. Like you're in the medical field, like there's people like what you end up going into is like what you are good at. Like it's really interesting. Like if you're a natural, like if you're a little healer, then you're going to go into the medical. You like taking care of people. And there's this whole thing of like, it's so interesting how what you say, life kind of brings back to you. So I don't want to attach. I keep telling the universe, like, I'm good. I've had my lessons. Like, I don't need any more lessons. I can have all grace and ease from here on out. I will create so much light through grace and ease. I don't need any more challenges. So,
Well, as much as I feel like we could just like have a girls' night and just chat all night, like break out a little wine and hang out, I guess we should kind of transition towards the end of our episode. But before we go into like our fast five and everything, we are a podcast and organization about confidence and communication. So I'd love to hear any of like your best practices for being a good communicator when you're just trying to connect with your community, with the people that help you with your business.
I think just being honest, and instead of trying to tell people what they want to hear, what you think that they want to hear, just really being honest and clear, and having clarity before you even speak. um and the, your tone and the way that you are, is everything. Like, you can get away with a lot of people, I think, are afraid of hurting someone's feelings or not saying the right thing. But when you speak from your heart in an authentic way, it gets received.
Where do you draw confidence from, or what does confidence mean to you right now?
That's interesting. I'm going to go back to all the stuff I've been through. Yeah, I've done a lot, and I've proved to myself over and over that, I can do things, and I could do hard things, and I'm going to be okay. And
All right. Well, maybe we'll go ahead and transition into it. We do like a fast 5 questions towards the end. Keisha, you want to start?
Sure. Okay. Dance party or karaoke?
dance party.
What's the best and what's the hardest part about being a mama?
Ooh. The best is, like, I've just never experienced love like I have until I was a mom. But the worst is that your heart is like living outside of your body for the rest of your life.
You're like double vulnerability.
Okay. Favorite yoga pose or stretch?
Ooh, that has definitely transitioned. I would say my favorite yoga pose is Warrior Two. It's just such a solid foundational pose, and if you stay in it long enough, you can learn so many lessons.
What is one health and wellness fact that everyone needs to know?
That what your body needs is different than what anybody else's needs. Like, you have to be your own best doctor and figure out what works for you intuitively, but also, like we talked about before, like, get some blood work done every 6 months. Like, check out your levels. Like,
Favorite affirmation or ritual?
well, my affirmation right now is I allow grace and ease in my life. And my favorite ritual is probably sunbathing. I just love, like, going outside in the morning and drinking my coffee in the sun. It just feels so good.
We always like to close with the same question, but looking back on your teen self, what's one attribute that you had then, but you didn't necessarily see the value in, but you appreciate so much more now that you're an adult?
I tell this to my son, like, anything that makes you feel awkward and weird. Like, I, hated my nose. I hated my smile. I critiqued everything about myself. And now I realize that those are my superpowers. And that's, I think, what I encourage, especially young women, like, find that one thing that you probably don't like and that makes you weird and unusual and different, and then embrace it, because it is your superpower if you allow it to be.
Yes, mic drop. I love. Thank you so much, Jessie. This has been such a treat. Your energy is just so infectious and so beautiful and light, and there's so much grace and ease about you. We would love to share like where people can find you, what you're working on right now, anything that you'd like to promote.
Well, thegoldensecrets.com is my website. And then on Instagram, Jessie Golden is where I share most commonly. I'm on all the things, even TikTok, guys. I started that during quarantine. And then at the Golden Secrets Instagram.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Jessie.
Thank you so much for spending the evening with us. And that's our show. If you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe to, follow, and share Meet Bridget with your circle. The best way to help our work here is to rate and review our podcast. We're listening and constantly working to build something helpful for you. Catch you next time.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?